We're totally booked.
Rock and roll!
Well, I think I'll leave you to your reading.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Rock and roller!
We are totally booked.
Welcome back to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. This is part 2 of my interview with Peter Gallagher, the author of the brand new book titled Kiss in the 1970s. Peter and I go through the 14 albums that Kiss released during that 70s period with the original 4 members. This includes the studio albums, which there were 8, the live albums, which there were 2, and the 4 solo albums released in 1978. I think you're going to be surprised by some of the picks that we make along the way, so let's get right to it. The top 14 Kiss 70s era albums.
Let me flick up my list then.
I got mine here. I got mine in old school paper here, right here, not even on computer.
Number 14 in my list, Hotter Than Hell.
Hotter Than Hell at 14.
14.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that means you think
song.
Peter's solo album is better than Hotter Than Hell.
I know.
Wow. Okay. All right.
I think I've got a list that no Kiss fan will agree with. I mean, as we mentioned already, Mainline, Strange Ways, All the Way. I even have it written down here, although I didn't mention it earlier till you did. But great songs, but there's the definite sophomore slump there. You can tell it's the second album, and it's got that terrible production.
My 14 is the Peter solo album. I cannot. I went back and listened to it actually recently, and I'm not. It's not like I can't listen to any of the songs. I do enjoy a few of them, kinda, but it's a little. It's a little too old school. I mean, we know where Peter's influences come from, so I respect the fact that he does that, and that's cool. I'm glad he did it. It's what he wanted to do. It's just I'm just not digging it. A little too sappy for me. Yeah, 14. It's at the bottom. Yeah.
Fair enough.
What do you got for 13?
13. Well, I think this might surprise you as well, but I've got Alive.
Wow, Alive.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
This is strictly a personal thing, though. I'm no fan of live albums.
Okay.
If there's someone wanting to get into Kiss, and you don't mind live albums, I would say it's a good place to go. It's a good summary of the first phase of their career. But strictly because of my personal aversion of live albums. That's the only reason it's so low.
Wow, okay. So my 13 is Gene's solo. And I kind of feel bad for putting it this low, but there're just so many great albums that go ahead of it. So, because I do like Radioactive, I really like Man of a Thousand Faces, Tunnel of Love. So it's a good album, but I just can't put it ahead of the others that I have on the list. So
okay,
yeah, Gene solo 13. Number 12.
Number 12. Well, following on what I've just said, it's got to be Alive 2. Again, just lack of excitement personally for live albums. However, it's above Alive because I think it does convey the excitement of the Kiss concert more than Alive does. At the time I got it, which was when it came out, I liked live albums. It's a thing that I've grown away from since. And I found Alive 2 genuinely exciting. And I also liked the strong set of studio songs on side 4. I even like the cover of Any Way You Want It. I think it's a great glammy reworking. And at this time in their career, we're also expecting a great package. So we get that fantastic gatefold cover. We've got the image you said with Gene Simmons covered in blood in the front. You've got the stage show inside. You've got all the freebies. It was just I got it as a Christmas gift, a Christmas 1977. And what a great Christmas gift it was. But because I've since gone off live albums, number 12.
We are on the same page. Alive 2 as my number 12. So I'm with you on that. And I'm going to give a shout out to Rocket Ride, one of my all-time favorite Ace songs. That's one of the studio tracks they include on that album. Love Rocket Ride and love Larger Than Life.
Yep.
Gene's song on there too. And yeah, from a personal standpoint, as I mentioned, that was when I became a fan seeing that cover. But again, so many great albums that go ahead of it. So Alive 2 is number 12. All right, so we're on to number 11.
Okay, number 11, this is where Peter Criss comes in. It's not a great record, I'm not going to argue with you there, but I would call it a half and half record. Half of it sucks completely, and half of it is interesting, and it's interesting. I suppose it's all interesting because he tries to do something different from Kiss. In many ways, he's the only one that really tries to do something different, so credit to be given there. However, weak songs let it down, but I do like the opening track. Don't have it in front of me.
I'm Gonna Love You.
I'm Gonna Love You, thank you.
Yeah.
I do like Don't You Let Me Down. I do like Easy Thing, and I do like Can't Stop the Rain. There's 4 songs that I like, so it's there at number 11. The rest,
Okay. Yep. The rest is rough. Yeah, tossing and turning, I just can't. Yeah, I can't. Yeah. But yeah, You Matter to Me, I'm Gonna Love You. Those are good tracks. Good tracks. All right. Yeah, my 11 is Unmasked.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember first listening to this. My college roommate told me about it, and he was is still a big alternative rock fan. But he said, this is such a cool album. You got to listen to it. And then the first thought I had was, damn, Peter sounds good on this album. And this is like pre-internet. And then I realized it's Anton Fig. Now I will say, damn, Anton Fig sounds good on that album. Yeah, it's a fun album. I love it. And Ace's Torpedo Girl is just so cool, man, with that funky beat. And you get the sound effect in the beginning. Man torpedoes, man torpedo. Your number 10. What do you got for number 10?
Okay, number 10 is Gene Simmons. Similar to Peter Criss, it's a half and half album. This time it's half typical Gene Simmons Kiss song, and then it's half more experimental stuff, and it's the more experimental stuff that I like the most. I actually don't need to listen to the more typical Gene stuff, and it makes me wish that he did more experimental stuff with the band. I'll See You Tonight. I think in the book I call it possibly the best Beatles song, not by a member of the Beatles. I don't know why it's got a cover version of See You in Your Dreams.
Yeah.
That's not particularly good. The version of When You Wish Upon a Star can live without that. But I do think there's some like Peter's, interesting experimentation, but it doesn't work overall.
All right. I do put Hotter Than Hell at 10.
Okay.
Despite the production, I just have to say that I love these songs that are on this album, including, like I mentioned before, Parasite, which is one of my all-time favorite Kiss songs. And I also got to mention a few other tunes on there that I just love, which would be Parasite, I mentioned, Going Blind, the title track. All the Way has gotten better and better over the years. In fact, I went to go see a Bob Seger tribute band the other night, and they were playing all these songs over the loudspeakers before the band went on. That was one of them. And I thought it was so cool that they included that in there. Why? I'm assuming is because they think it's good too. Watching You, Coming Home. So yeah, I'm going to put that up there. Despite the production, it would have probably been higher up if the production was better. But we got number 9. That's next.
Yep, number 9. Okay, this is where I struggle most, to be honest with you. Number 7 to 9. I could probably change more. If you ask me next week, it'd be different. But I'm going to go with Dynasty for number 9. Loses points for Dirty Living, as I said earlier. Don't need a cover version when I could have had an original Ace song. And Magic Touch is so, but the rest of it I like. Number 9. But if you ask me next week, could be a wee bit higher.
All right. So number 9, I've got Paul Solo. Paul Solo's album is really good.
Yep.
That is, I would say, a close second to Ace's among those 4 solo albums. So got to give it to Paul on this one. I want to go through some of the tracks on this. Tonight You Belong to Me, Move On, Wouldn't You Like to Know Me? Solid, would have been a really good Kiss track. It's All Right is another one. Those are the songs that really stand out for me. He's got Bob Kulick on guitar, by the way, which, as you mentioned in your book, Bob auditioned for the band back in the day. Almost got the gig, didn't, but his brother gets the gig in the 80s. That was interesting, right? That was cool. You're number 8.
Okay, that's Love Gun. To me, it sounds too much like Rock and Roll Over 2, but the title track, Shock Me, and Tomorrow and Tonight are all essentials. So there you go, number 8.
So my number 8 is Dynasty. I will say that I know people rag on I Was Made for Loving You, but it is a damn good pop song, and it's a well-written disco era song. So I got to give it up for that one. And you mentioned Sure Know Something, which I do like as well. I also, all of the Ace songs I love on here. Gene's got some great songs. Charisma is cool. X-Ray Eyes. So I think it's certainly worthy of, it's a Kiss album. I mean, I know Peter's not on it, but it still it maintains that Kiss magic, in my opinion. Plus, that's around the time I became a fan, so a little personal connection there.
Yep.
All right, what do we got next?
Number 7.
Number 7.
Okay, I'm going for Dress to Kill. I think it's a strong set of songs. If the production was better, it'd probably be higher, but it's purely the production that keeps it down at 7. Good album.
Okay. My number 7, I have Dress to Kill, which we have to mention how cool that album cover is. Low budget, but it's so great. It's the guys dressed up in the suits, and they don't even fit because it's somebody else's suits. I forget whose suits it was. You mentioned it in the book.
Bill O'Coin suits.
I love that. And they're in somewhere in the city, New York City.
Yeah, and next time I'm in New York, I need to make sure I go to that corner and get my picture taken.
Absolutely. So obviously we have the huge hit single. The live version would become a huge hit, but you've got Rock and Roll Night on there. Come On and Love Me, Rock Bottom, She, Love Her All I Can. There's another one. Love Her All I Can is another one that just seems to get better over time for me.
I agree. Again, I would say Love Her All I Can is more power pop than anything else, but there you go.
What do you have for 6?
6, Rock and Roll Over.
Okay,
Destroyer was the first Kiss album I ever heard, but Rock and Roll Over was the first one I bought. So therefore, the switch from Bob Ezrin to Eddie Kramer took a bit of adjusting. However, having said that, if you ditch Baby Driver, I actually don't care if you don't replace it with anything else, just ditch it.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that either.
Yeah, you've got an excellent record, and you have another outstanding sleeve design. So, solid record.
Ace Solo is my number 6, and as we've already mentioned, that is solid from start to finish. That is a classic album all on its own. Doesn't even really need to stand out as among the 4 solo albums during the Kiss period. I mean, if it was just released on its own without any connection to Kiss, I think it still would be great. New York Groove leads the way. You got a hit single. People go out and buy the album, and they find out the rest is kick ass. Rip It Out, Speed Back to My Baby, Snowblind, Ozone, What's on Your Mind, I'm in Need of Love, Wiped Out, and the instrumental Fractured Mirror, the first of, I think, 3 or 4. He does some sequels to Fractured Mirror over the years. So A+ for Ace right there. Yep. There you go. Number 5.
Okay, and to the top 5, Paul Stanley. Lots of power pop goodness. Wouldn't You Like to Know Me is a brilliant Raspberries tribute. Again, I think there's 9 tracks on the album. 8 of them are excellent. Hold Me, Touch Me, not so excellent, but top album.
Okay, my number 5. See, this is where it gets tough. You get into the top 5. I got the Kiss debut at number 5. And again, as we mentioned earlier, this, to me, as opposed to Hotter Than Hell, is a Kiss classic. And I think it's produced well. I love the sound of it. First time I ever heard it was on vinyl. My older brother had it on vinyl.
Yep.
And maybe that's also why I felt it sounded so good, because as we know, vinyl always sounds better than anything else. But yeah, Nothing to Lose, Kissin' Time, Strutter were the singles, but you can't forget just some of the other ones on there. Nothing to Lose. I know you don't like Firehouse. I do like Firehouse. Cold Gin is one of those first songs. That was when I first realized that Kiss is more than just the hits. Cold Gin. And I do love the love theme from Kiss. 100,000 Years, Black Diamond. Deuce. We can't forget Deuce. That's a huge, huge song for Kiss. So, yeah. Number 5. All right. We are up to number 4.
Number 4. That's where I put the debut. So you've basically said everything I would have said.
Covered it all.
Covered it all. Strong debut. Great song set. As you know, Firehouse is Lonely, Dodgy One, everything else I like. Would probably have been higher if not for the production, but number 4 is where it is.
All right, I've got Love Gun at 4. And again, another great cover by Ken Kelly. Love Gun, as I mentioned, would have been perfect if not for Then She Kissed Me. I don't like that cover at all. But then the other songs, the 9 songs that make up the rest of the album, perfect Kiss. I Stole Your Love, which is one of the best album openings, period.
Yep.
Not just from Kiss. Christine 16, Got Love for Sale, Shock Me, Tomorrow and Tonight, Love Gun, Hooligan, Almost Human, Plaster Caster. You can't beat that one. So that's my number 4, Love Gun. All right, number 3.
Number 3, Unmasked.
Nice.
It's much higher than most people would have it, but again, I like my power pop, and this is a great power pop album.
That's a gutsy call there. All right, Unmasked. All right, I've got Rock and Roll Over at 3. Rock and Roll Over.
Okay.
Another great cover. Michael Durrett, I believe this is how you pronounce
Michael Durrett, yeah.
No matter which way you turn it, it depends on how you turn it. You know, you got 2 members at the top, 2 members on the bottom, or on the side, however you want to. But yeah, that's a cool album cover. Hard Luck Woman, Calling Dr. Love. I mean, those singles are great, but I also Love 'Em and Leave 'Em. I love Him and Leave 'Em. And they made a video for that. You ever see the video for Love 'Em and Leave 'Em? It's on YouTube.
I must have. I'll look it up, but I must have seen it.
Hard Luck Woman, you got to give it up to Peter on that one.
Yep.
Ladies Room, Take Me. I Want You is another amazing album opener. Yeah, that's my number 3. All right, we're up to the final 2, the top 2. Okay, what's your number 2?
Number 2 is Ace Frehley. Again, the way I worked this out, I actually found it easier to do the top 5. And the way I worked it out is which do I go back to the most? And Ace Frehley, I go back to more than any of the other ones we've mentioned. I just think it's excellent from start to finish. You've got the hard rocking of Rip It Out. You've got pop, Speeding Back to My Baby and New York Groove. You've got a wee bit prog going on with Fractured Mirror. I think Frehley showed a lot of potential as a songwriter in the first 3 albums, but that potential comes home here. It's all fulfilled on this album. I think not just a good Kiss album, it's a great rock album, full stop.
Can't argue that. All right, my number 2 is Destroyer. We know how important it is to the band and their history. It's also, just from a personal standpoint, just one of my all-time favorites. And I would say Detroit Rock City is probably the best Kiss song of all time. It's just outstanding. And I love the lyric, I know I'm going to die. Why? It's just like Paul is a really good songwriter.
Yeah.
He gets enough credit. Detroit Rock City. Yeah. King of the Nighttime World, God of Thunder, which who would have thought Paul originally sang that one, right, on the demo, and then they gave it to Gene, which was a smart move. God of Thunder, classic. Yeah. Great Expectations, Flaming Youth, Sweet Pain, Shout It Out Loud, which is a solid follow-up to Rock and Roll All Night. It's not like a cardboard cutout, or it's not a rip-off of Rock and Roll All Night. It is another anthem, but I think it stands on its own. Beth, of course. Yeah, Beth is just that, the importance of that song. Do You Love Me? Yeah, that's it. And again, that cover. Love the cover. I had the jigsaw puzzle of Kiss Destroyer as a kid. I don't know whatever happened to it, but I love it. That's my number 2. All right, here we go. So we get down to number 1.
Number 1, so I can guess your number 1 now.
Yep.
And my number 1 is Destroyer.
All right.
And several reasons for it. Number 1, first Kiss album I ever heard. Therefore, it's the album that convinced me I wanted to hear more. It does, as you've said, it's got a great cover. I would say it's arguably Ken Kelly's best work. His interpretation of the 4 figures, the fact they all are very individualised in terms of their stance, that dominant purple colour, even the colouring of the logo. I mean, this one really leapt out when it first came out, and it was put in the windows of record stores. It just popped out at you, and it made you want to hear it. So I had a friend at school that had it. I borrowed it, and that's where my love affair with 70s Kiss began. Music-wise, full of Kiss classics. You've just mentioned Detroit Rock City, absolute classic. Shout It Out Loud is great. Flaming Youth, Great Expectations, Do You Love Me? I think I've said earlier I'm not a huge fan of Beth, or at least I do say it in the book that I'm not a huge fan of Beth, but at least it adds a different colour to Kiss's palette, so it serves a purpose. And of course, as we have mentioned earlier, it's a fantastic production job from Bob Ezrin. It's no surprise to me that it's in all these books like 1,000 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die and so on. Absolute cracker.
Can't argue that one. I could very easily have put that at number one, but I am going to go with Kiss Alive as the number one. And it's interesting because this is not the first live album I listened to. Kiss Alive 2 was the one. But then I heard so much about the Alive album, I had to know what everybody was talking about, and I got it. And we should also mention that I think another reason for the album's success, you got to also give credit to that cover, because back in those days when you're walking through the record aisles, it's the album cover that's going to have to grab you. And that cover of the band, and it's not an actual live photo, they're posing, but you got the smoke in the back, you got that iconic Kiss logo that you talked about, and you got the four members. You could see Peter enough in the background there, but you're looking at Gene with the tongue out and Ace doing the pose. That had to have drawn people in, and once they bought the album and listened to it, they realized just how good this band is. And I think that's important too. But you've got the live versions of these songs, which is interesting because I always try to remember Ace pulls a guitar part from one song and includes it into, I want to say, Black Diamond. I don't know if you recall this. It's I'm trying to remember, but anyway, the live versions are my favorite is 100,000 Years, of course, because you got Paul in the middle doing his rock and roll preacher thing, you know.
Yeah.
You just, I mean, it's untouchable. It's considered one of the greatest albums in rock history, and maybe the greatest live album of all time, even though, you know, you can argue it's not completely live, whatever. Yeah. It is what it is, man. It's a rock and roll classic. There you go. And like I said, I did it in like 70s style.
Almost to be believed.
70s style, you know, I got a little notebook paper here.
Yeah.
Like, I did it while I was at my 9 to 5, kind of like a kid on his desk, you know, in the middle of math class or something. Instead of learning, I'm writing about Kiss. All right, Peter, this was cool, man. This was fun. Always loving talking Kiss, and it was great to have you back on. First time we had you on for your Warren Zevon book, and you had told me back then I got a Kiss book coming. So, as promised, you were back. So the book is out now through Sonic Bond, and people can get it through Amazon. They can get it through Burning Shed. If you're in the UK, it's usually, I think it's best to get it through that route in the UK, burningshed.com.
Yep.
Okay. Or Amazon. All right, Peter, thanks so much. This was fun.
Thanks for having me back, Eric. Look forward to the next time. Don't know what it will be, though.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. To be continued.
That's it. It's in the books.